You are now tuning in to the Talking with Evie podcast.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be back. This is Dr. Evie Burns, Talking with Evie. First of all, I want to thank you guys so very much for your comments and talking it up, and please continue to like and subscribe and tell us the contents you'd like to hear. I just want to give a shout out to, I met a young lady on a cruise, Pam, and her and her family, they're excited about the podcast. Hey, Pam, how you doing? Thank you so very much for encouraging me, because I was kind of being in a slump, didn't know how everybody was feeling about the content. Thank you so very much. Thank you, because without you guys, I'm nothing. Now, getting all that said, again this morning, Alastair Hunt has been kind of my co-anchor, the one who's trying to kick me out of his life. He has been on a tremendous trek, a journey, and I think it's so awesome. And today I want him to tell us he's been to Liberia, and I just want him to tell you about his experience and what happened. So we're excited about it. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Glad to be back.
Tell us about this kingdom building.
Yeah. So where do I start, right? If you go back and listen to the episode that we did before it is that I left, you can kind of get the context of Kingdom Relationship Network, what it is that we're about, and this whole journey to be able to join the organization. And next thing you know, she's invited me to go with her to Africa.
Who is she?
This is Albertina Nayenti, who is the executive director and the founder of Kingdom Relationship Network, right? And she had a vision, just to give a summary. She had a vision to be able to go to Liberia and make a huge change. Coming from Liberia and coming from growing up in Liberia and surviving through the civil war that they had, the 10-year civil war, and being a refugee, and then also being a childhood slave in Liberia. She actually was in child forced labor, and escaping out of that, the first thing that she did was go back and start rescuing kids, even whenever she just got out. It's kind of like a Harriet Tubman story, right. And then that was when God told her that this is what she would be doing.
That is kind of scary, because most time, just talking human wise, you've been a family member comes and they tell your family they're going to treat you good, and they take you somewhere else, and then you are not treated that way. And then she was able to get out of that. So most people will say, okay,
I'm out.
I'm out. And that's it. But when she got out, God just touched her heart. And she came back, and from the story, she goes back and she rescues somebody else. And this is how this organization got started. I'm excited. So tell us more.
All right. So she goes back. She was actually going back to get her stuff, from whenever she escaped. And then she saw this little girl in the same situation, rescued her, didn't have any money. So she negotiated to be at the bottom of the bus, the two girls to be able to escape. And then she started a nonprofit in Liberia, kind of like an orphanage.
Right.
But the problem is you can't just go and grab kids, even though it is that you're rescuing them from a bad situation. The parents have signed off for these kids to be in this situation, not knowing what was going to happen. So you can't just go and grab the kids out of it.
Who they're signing off to?
Whoever it is that. So for Albertina's instance, it was actually some family members, right? So sometimes it's family members, sometimes it's people they think are their friends, and they're actually signing the rights to the kids into these people, thinking that it's going to be a better life, or thinking that they're giving their kids an opportunity. Some of these people have never left their little villages, right? Yes. So for their kids to have a chance to go back to the big city and get a better education, live a better life is very, very appealing. What they don't know is that these kids are sleeping in the corner. They're using the bathroom in a pot, and their job is to take care of the family while they're there and go out and sell on the streets while the other kids are going to school. So
let me ask you this. When they sell on the corner, does the money that they make, does it go back to their family?
It goes to the family who it is that's watching them, right?
To the family that's watching
Correct.
Them and not their own family.
Correct.
That's what I want to establish.
Correct. Whenever they're in these child forced labor, most of the time, and I'm speaking from general terms, most of the time, the money is going back to the family that's watching them. This is you paying your dues for living there, taking care of our family and selling on the streets is what it is that you're supposed to do. So what
happens to their family that signed off?
The family that signed off usually has either paid or whatever else for them to send their kids. So they think that their kids are being taken care of and having a better life. It's not like here where you have the internet or regular communication back and forth where you just send off and hope for the best, right?
Wow.
And so they have no clue what is going on with their kids, especially if it's family. The relays that they're getting back is everything is fine, everything is good, so on and so forth.
And they're not communicating with their child to find out if that's really true.
Again, and it's hard for us to be able to comprehend as Americans because we have so many ways to connect. Social media, video chat, phone, so on and so forth. But that doesn't exist in these small rural areas of Liberia. So, communication is very limited back and forth. And again, a lot of these people have never left their respective towns. So it's not like they can go visit their kids. So that they kind of feed off of that. Does that make sense? And so when Albertina finally, she went through the Civil War and became a refugee in several different countries and finally was able to make it to America, found her current husband. Now she has 4 boys, but it's always been, she calls it a burden, but it's always been on her heart to be able to go back and to rescue kids out of the same situation that she came out of the child forced labor situation. So that's where Kingdom Relationship Network was born. She started as an orphanage. She had to redo it because of everything. Got her 501c3 nonprofit here in the U.S. and in Liberia.
Okay.
And then set up Kingdom Relationship Network. And her first goal was to establish a relationship with the government so that she could have backing when she goes and takes these children out of their situations. She can do it legally and make sure everything was lined up.
Okay, so take us now to how you fit in and tell us a bit about your trek and your journey and some of the things you saw, because I saw the clips and I was just amazed how the children came out and greeted you guys. And like you say, we have so much here in America that we take it for granted that the children, I saw that part of the clip where the people were supposed to show up at one time and they didn't, and you all did some entertainment, and they sat there for like 2 hours or more.
Yeah.
So tell us, please.
Well, yeah, that's such a big journey. So moving on to how I got involved, Albertina and I attend the same church, and our pastor's wife, Pastor Hope, shout out to Pastor Hope.
Hello.
Pastor Hope actually introduced us together. Actually, the first person that introduced us was Pastor Carrie, his assistant pastor. And she brought Albertina up to me at church, said, this lady needs some help with social media and web design, which is my background. This is the guy you need to talk to. And he also has a podcast studio.
Okay.
And so we had set up for a time to meet, and it just didn't work out. A couple of days later, I was working out in our community garden, and Pastor Hope was meeting with Albertina about the mission and the church supporting her mission. And she mentioned the same thing. I need to get, social media. And she's like, well, I got a guy you need to talk to, not knowing that Pastor Carrie had already introduced us, brought her out to community garden. I said, oh yeah, we talked. We just didn't get a chance to meet. And then we set up a time, and her coming out to the podcast studio to record her story is the beginning of our story together. Cause I was so moved by her story and her mission and the nonprofit mission that I said, okay, I know she didn't have a big budget and everything else like that, really no budget, but I want to be able to help. And that's kind of how it is that started. So we started with recording her story so we can get her story out there. And then we started working on her social media. And it went from, this is what you need to do to this is what we need to do. And she's like, we? She's like, so are you jumping in aboard? And I was like, no, I got too much on my plate. I'll help you where it is that I can. But, and even Pastor Hope, she said, look, I don't want to volunteer you for anything. I know how busy it is that you are, but I think once you hear this lady's story, you're going to want to get involved. And look, I love helping nonprofits. That's my passion, but everybody comes to me and everybody has a story about how they have no budget and big needs, right? And I've learned to be able to say no or to be able to redirect them to someplace else. I mean, at least once a week, I get somebody who comes and needs my help. But just you have to be able to have the power to say no sometimes to protect your balance of life, your family, and everything else like that. So I was fully prepared for this to be one of those situations. But God was putting on my heart, and God was really, whenever I heard her story and whenever I saw the pictures, and it something moved that I needed to be a part of this. Now, she came back the next day and said, God put a vision for me to be president of the U.S. organization. I was like, whoa. President, no. But I will serve as director of technology on your board. And even that was something I had to pray about and everything else like that. But then we went into action. Within a week, we had her website, her social media up. We had the video out there. And the first mission that she said that she wanted to accomplish was she wanted to get 20 of they call them street kids, kids off the street that are selling it into school. These kids are because it's $50 a year for these kids to go to school. The parents that can't afford to be able to send those kids to school, send them out on the streets to be able to sell wares and support the family, right? Wow. When you have 4 or 5 kids and it's $50 per kid and the average income is $200 to $300 per month, you can't afford to be able to send your kids to school and support the family.
What does that $50 bring?
So $50 covers their tuition. When we put it together, we calculated $50 for the tuitions, their shoes, their uniform, their school supplies, and the books that they need in order to be able to go to school. Really, the tuition itself is about $20, $25 of that. Wow. And then we negotiated with a whole bunch of different local vendors to get good deals because we were doing so many kids. So she said, I just wanted to get 20 kids off of the street, and that's my passion. And for whatever reason, the Spirit moved me, and I said, let's do 100.
Wow.
And I don't know where that came from. As a matter of fact, later on that night, I was like, why did I say 100 kids? But I was like, let's go ahead. If we can do 20 at $50 a piece, that's the cost of somebody going to dinner, with their family, or that's the cost of somebody, just not buying whatever, their favorite, shoes or jacket. And they could put one kid to school for a year. I think we can get 100 people to say, I can do that between the circle influence and us getting it out there. And so that's why I said 100. But then after I did it, she let me know that we only had 2 months to to get it done. So then I was like, well, maybe 100 is too lofty. But I was like, let's just put it out there and let's see what's going on. And through the people at my church, people like you, because you sponsored a couple of kids as well.
Yes, I did.
Right. And just the people that we know, we were able to raise about half of the money in the 2 months. But the great thing is that we have an amazing team in Liberia. We have 5 people that are on the board in Liberia, and led by our country director, Edlin Masley. They were able to negotiate with the schools for us to pay for 1 semester at a time instead of the whole year. They were also able to go and negotiate with a seamstress local to be able to sew all the uniforms versus us having to order pre-made uniforms, which cut the cost down on that. And then we negotiated, because we were doing 100 kids, we negotiated with the people with the shoes, with the school supplies to get the cost down, where we're able to get the kids into school, all 100 of them. Because here's the other thing. This is a program. What people don't understand, we didn't just randomly pick 100 kids. The team actually went and interviewed the parents. They interviewed the kids to make sure that these kids were truly in need. It's not just somebody who was just trying to skip out on paying for the tuition. So when you interview 100 kids and you have 100 kids ready, you can't just go back and say, I'm sorry, we're only able to raise money for 50. It didn't sit with us right. So we knew we had to get these 100 kids in. We just didn't know how it was going to happen. And God moved everything and set everything up. So we were able to get all 100 in school with their uniforms, with their new shoes, with their books and everything for one semester.
What was their response?
It was amazing. Like the town itself was overwhelmed because a lot of people promised stuff. A lot of the people have been promised so much, and there's a lot of nonprofits that come in and claim they're going to do something. They'll do the fundraiser, they'll take the pictures with the people, and then they disappear. They never come back. Not even a we're not able to do it. Not even a this is not.
They just go.
They just disappear, right? And so they have a lot of hurt when it comes to trusting nonprofit organizations. But for us, the best thing that could have happened, I believe this is a God moment for us to be able to do the 100 kids first before we launch the building of the children's village, because it solidifies some trust that we are going to do what we say we're going to do, right? It also opened a lot of doors because it created some buzz in the country. So by the time it is that we got there, not even knowing that it created buzz, they already knew a little bit about who we are and what it is that we did. So that was a 100% God thing, because that wasn't our intention, and we had no clue that it was going to have that effect whenever it is that we got there. So fast forward, we get the 100 kids in, and so we've been talking mainly via WhatsApp video, because the internet there is not good, so you can't even do Zoom. So WhatsApp video with our team, with the people of the town, sending messages back and forth. So even Albertina had never met these people in person. She had been working with the country director.
The people there in Liberia.
Yeah, in Liberia. She started this 10 years ago, but she met the country director, and shout out to Zena, who is the actual representative for the town. She met them about 6 years ago and hadn't met them in person. These are all through mutual associates, people that she knows that have worked with these amazing people. And so for them to have trust in her and her to have trust in them to be able to build this, and the amount of work that they did for free, this is all volunteer, for free on the ground, just completely blows my mind, right? I mean, these are truly kingdom-minded, God-driven people, right? And so it was like, when we got there, it was like a family reunion, because this is the first time we're meeting them in person after all of the back and forth. So it was a very emotional, very amazing moment whenever it is that we got down there. How were you greeted?
Tell me about it.
Oh, that's it. So let me fast forward a little bit. I didn't want to go. I had resistance to going to Africa because it wasn't on my radar, busy schedule and everything else like that. And Albertina said, we really want you to be able to go. And I prayed on it. Talked to my mom, who is a super spiritual warrior, prayer warrior. She's supposed to be the voice of reason that told me no. And she said, you need to consider it. And I was like, that was supposed to be my out.
But that was the opposite, because usually it's your dad that supports, but
Absolutely.
It was the opposite.
Yeah,
he was the one now.
And he had a little bit of resistance because whenever you look up Africa and everything that's going on in Africa and instability, whatever you look for, you'll find. And when he saw that was his initial resistance. But he actually came to our gala. We had a big fundraising gala right before we left. And the keynote speaker, shout out to Pastor James, actually spoke with him and gave him a vision of what it was really like. And I think that kind of eased some of that anxiety. And he turned into one of my biggest supporters, like he always has been. I knew it was there, but even him having resistance almost caused me to be in resistance.
But that was such a pivotal moment for you, because you and your family are very close, and that was important.
And that's why I think the enemy tried to use that avenue to be able to put doubt in my mind. I knew that because of the everything working out the way that it was supposed to on one side, but then all the weird resistance that was happening on the other side, that this was a battle for something major that was going to happen, right? So that was one of the tools the enemy tried to use, but it ended up turning around and being one of the biggest support things. Is God can take any situation and make it into something that he can utilize and that he can have you grow from. And that's what this whole trip was.
That's the won't he do it moment.
Won't he do it, right? So here it is that we're finally, I make the decision, we're going to Africa, and still not knowing what's going to happen, how this is going to be financed. It was a complete walk of faith. Remember, I just met this lady, 3-4 months ago, and now I'm going across the world with her for 2 weeks with people I don't know, right? They have no clue, anything about. She arranged every place where we're going to stay, the food, all that kind of stuff. So 100% walking in blind faith, but every step of the way there was no anxiety, and God was confirming that this is what it is that needs to be done, right? And never have been to Africa in my life. You know, I've been overseas before, but this is only the second time that I've actually gone overseas. So it was a lot of adjustments and trying to figure out what it was. But we were so focused on raising the money and to be able to make sure everything was taken care of. I didn't have a lot of time to think about what was going to happen once we get there. Everything was making sure that once we were there, we can get all the stuff accomplished. So we had a list of things that we wanted to be able to accomplish when we were there. We wanted to be able to make sure we had the groundbreaking for the land, for the Children's Village. We wanted to, one of the gentlemen there that's on our board, that's over our publicity and media, he asked me, he said, look, you being a Black successful male in the U.S. and having a lot of kids over here that have never had exposure to that, is it okay if we put together an IT seminar where you just talk to them about the IT field and give them a little bit of hope? And so that was another of the big events that we were going to have while we are down there. I said, Joshua, if you put it together, you know, I've spoken to a lot of kids here in the U.S. before, so I'll be happy to do that there. What I didn't realize is that I'm speaking at a whole different level than speaking to kids in the U.S. Right? These kids have a lot of drive, and they're very, very smart. They just don't have a lot of opportunity available to them just because technology is not easily accessible to them. So whereas I'm talking about how it is that you can build websites, how it is that you can do IT, some of them have never turned on a computer before. Right? A lot of them don't even have smartphones. They have what we call flip phones or burner phones, right? So they have those there. So their access to, and because of the internet is so limited and you pay as you go with the internet, a lot of people don't have access to a lot of the internet there. So whenever I started speaking to, you know, some of the people there, Joseph, who's actually a teacher there and is on our board as well, and Joshua, they were like, you got to scale it way back. You know, when I sent them here's a first draft of what I want to talk about, they're like, you're going to go way over their heads because they have never had exposure to this. And then I got nervous. I don't get nervous with speaking usually, but then I started getting nervous because I like knowing my audience and I like knowing what I'm going to walk into. And I realized I was way out of my element and I had to humble myself and say, all right, Lord, you're going to have to deliver what it is that I need to be able to speak to these kids. All the way up until the night before the seminar, I didn't sleep. I stayed up redoing my presentation, trying to make sure it is that I'm watering it down enough so that they can understand, but at the same time, I'm giving them something that they can utilize right away. I didn't want to talk at them. I wanted to give them tools that they can put into effect right away. So that was one of the goals that we had, was the IT seminar. And then we had some opportunities through Zena to possibly meet with some of the new president and his cabinet in the country. So we thought, you know, the first lady
actually met the president.
Well, no. So we thought our goal wasn't that high. We didn't want to meeting the president in the 2 weeks was not in our goal. Meeting the first lady was a possibility because a lot of what her initiatives align with our initiatives with Kingdom Relationship Network. So I figure if we can meet based on that, then that would be a great connection to make. So Zena was working it out. He's very well connected within the political arena. And so he was working it out so we could possibly just have a couple of minutes with her. Right. But it was our first, when we hit Africa, it was our first sign that if we pushed and tried to make stuff happen, instead of letting God open the doors, and we would learn some lessons, right? And so when we got there, we had the ability. He's like, all right, we have a chance to go meet with her. She's agreed to be able to meet with us, and our goal was to get her to come to the groundbreaking, right? And so that way it could support the project, and then also just allow her to know what we plan on doing in Liberia. So we have a chance to be able to go meet with the first lady, but I was uncomfortable with it because Albertina wasn't there. Albertina had something else that she had to go do. And so I wanted them to really be connected. And then B, it seemed rushed. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, now we have a window. We got to go now. And so we get to what would be considered the White House or, you know, the main offices of the president. And then we get there, we go through all the security. And again, it's just like, is this really happening on the first day that we're here? And so we get all the way up, get all through the security, get our security passes. They have their version of Secret Service escort us up, and we're outside of.
That's big stuff.
Yeah. So we're outside of her office. They didn't even have chairs outside her office. They had to bring chairs, and her security, her main security, was like, "Okay, stop. Y'all can't go in." Right. And I'm like, "But we're right here. Like the door is literally right there." He's like, "I'll let one of you go in to talk to her. I'm not letting because there was 4 of us, and I'm not letting all 4 of you go in the office. So the 3 of you stay out here, and then one person can go in." Okay. And I said to our country director, I was like, "You're here. You're going to be dealing with her. It doesn't make any sense for me to go in. So you go in." So he went in. She said, "Thank you," because we had sent a letter to her before inviting her to the groundbreaking. She said, "I got your letter. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have too many events. I won't be able to make it to the groundbreaking, but I do want to meet with you guys before it is that you leave in the 2 weeks." And so he comes out and he's like, "She said she couldn't come, but she would send somebody on her behalf. And she wants to meet with us before we left in 2 weeks." So we were right there outside the door and, essentially got shut down. And we could have looked at it as, "Oh man, we got shut down," or we had said, "Okay, we got 2 weeks, so it's going to happen for them." So that was our forced effort to be able to make it happen. The next day was International Women's Day, which in a lot of different countries, they have them different days. But in Africa, it's a big deal. International, it's a holiday. The president decreed it as an actual holiday. So Oliver, who is one of Albertina's nephews, actually works for Office of the Gender. Office of the Gender would kind of be like they're over education, they're over women's rights, they're over child protective services. Right. So they have different ministries.
Kind of the powers to be.
Correct. Okay. So just like we have our Department of Education here, different ministry, they have different ministries there. And so he worked in there. And so he said, "Hey, I want you to come to this event because there's going to be a lot of influential people there." And so we said, "Sure. I mean, if there's going to be influential people, that's where we need to be." Yeah. Plus, Albertina's all for, we actually have a women's empowerment director in our organization. So we have a women's empowerment movement within. So we wanted to align it. So we dressed up. We got custom African shirts made. So her oldest son came to Africa with us. His name is Abner. And so him and I had matching custom. It was an all white event. So we had custom white shirts with gold embroidery. Albertina from the same seamstress had a dress that matched ours. So we walked in there looking like we were dignitaries for someplace, right? And in doing so, again, another God moment, right? And in doing so, when the event was over, they said, "Okay, we want all the dignitaries and everybody to come to the stage to take pictures with," and guess who was there? The First Lady. The Second Lady, the Vice President's wife. What would be considered kind of like our Speaker of the House. Was for the first time a woman. So they call her the Pro Tem. She was there. And all of these the most powerful women in Liberia are all up on stage. There. Yeah, they have them on a kind of like a panel on stage. So each one of them got to speak and they're up on stage and they're like, "Okay, so all the dignitaries come to the front and take pictures with them." Well, we were looking like dignitaries, so her nephew was like, "Come on, let's go," right? And Albertina saw somebody that she knew on stage and went up to go speak to that lady who was on the table, and then right then the national song started to play. So all the ladies turn around to take pictures, and then all of a sudden Albertina is up there in the middle of all the most powerful women in Liberia. But because of her posture and how she was dressed, she looked like she fit. So for me, I, of course, ran up and snapped a picture because this to me represented you belong among the most powerful women. And it was kind of a sign, a prophecy, if you will, that she belongs among the most powerful women in Liberia. But that also allowed her to be able to go to lunch with those women and have discussions with them and invite them to our groundbreaking. So when we pushed to try and get this to happen, it didn't happen. But in God's timing, she was able to take pictures with the First Lady, the Second Lady, the Pro Tem, the different representatives to UN.
Designed by God.
Absolutely. We wouldn't have been able to force and make that situation happen. God opened the right doors and allowed it to happen. So that was our first, and this is day 2. So this is our first sign that this trip is going to be us trusting in God to be able to allow doors to happen. So fast forward to the groundbreaking. Unfortunately, those ladies weren't able to make it, but they sent 2 of the senators over the region that we were building the village in.
Okay.
And then the director of education sent a representative, the office of gender sent a representative. So we had a lot of political representatives there. The one of the radio stations, the main radio stations came out. A couple of the internet radio stations, they came out too because they heard the buzz about what it is that we're doing, and Albertina spreading the word in that room. So again, if we had forced it, and I got to give a shout out to Joshua because he did the follow up with the media to make sure he's there. Look, the guy who came, he's big time. He'd be like some big time reporter, political reporter here in the U.S. Yeah. He was that for the country. He said, look, Joshua would not stop blowing up my phone to make sure. And when I told him, I didn't have, because it's about a 2-hour drive from the Capitol. He said, when I told him, can you pay for transportation? Because I don't have, he put me in his car with all of his people. So they were all packed up in a car to drive 2 hours, which was the smartest thing he could do because he couldn't leave us at that point, right? But he wanted to make sure that they were getting there. So he got somebody to borrow, because Joshua doesn't have a car. So he got somebody to drive him, let them use the car, drive him, put the reporters in the car with them, along with his fiance and their friends, and they drove the 2 hours to get to Bomi County. But that was also a God thing because of the interview that he did with Albertina and I about the upcoming IT seminar and about what happened at the groundbreaking. The president actually heard that interview and then had the the Minister of Education call Albertina on her birthday. Yeah. So again, things that we wouldn't have been able to plan out just happened because God was ordaining these things. And so we had the groundbreaking. It was amazing. The senators spoke. They actually were able to do the first part of the groundbreaking and pledge their support to the actual Children's Village, the building of Children's Village. One of them even donated 100 bags of cement towards the project. And so it was just amazing being able to go through all their traditions. So you asked about when we got to the village. The first time we visited the village was that second day. Yes. We decided just to go out and surprise the people because we were so anxious to meet them, right? Yeah. We knew that it wasn't until a week until the groundbreaking, but we wanted to meet them, but we wanted to surprise them. Well, word got to them that we were coming, and as we're coming into the village, it's this long road, dirt road to come into the village. They met us halfway. Wow. And they were dancing and they were singing.
That's like a scene of the movie.
It really was a scene of the movie because we're pulling up on this dirt, dusty road, dust everywhere. And we got word that they had a surprise for us. So one of our guys, who's now our social media director, it's the country director's son. His name is Edwin Jr. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take you under my wing because you want to do graphics. Yeah. And so I said, you're going to be our paparazzi. You're going to be our videographer the whole entire time. Your job is just to take pictures. Okay. So they have little motorcycle taxis. And in order to get to the village, because the roads are so windy, you could get lost. We actually had to hire a motorcycle taxi so we could follow him in to the village so we wouldn't get lost. And so Edwin got out and got on the back of the motorcycle taxi to film us coming into the village, right? Wow. So he's sitting backwards on the motorcycle taxi, filming us. I was like, this is dedication because, you got dusty roads. We had to give him a mask because there was so much dust and everything else like that. But we were able to capture them coming up and dancing and leading us into the village. And it was just, like you said, it was surreal. It was like something off of a movie. They were so happy. They were so grateful. The amount of gratitude that we felt was what really was moving about that whole entire thing. So us being able to film and document that. And we thought we were just coming to see the property, to say hello. They took us to the town hall. They had an official welcoming ceremony and everything else like that. And they gave us the deed to the land, there. And it just was a thing. But the kids, seeing the children, that's what we were doing it for. So they got a majority of the 100 kids that we got into school together to come in to be able to greet us. And that was emotional, but it also filled our spirit. It was like, this is what we've been working for. This is what we've been doing. And to actually see the kids in person and how in awe they were, and, you know, and no communication, but just being able to be there with them. And then the villagers told us that the kids wanted to walk us to the land from the capital. So you saw the video clips of the kids. They just grabbed our hands. Each one of them was grabbing a finger.
And what about this little guy that grabbed your shirt?
Yeah, so we're walking, and each one of them grabbing a finger or part of my hand. Well, there was a little guy that couldn't. I ran out of fingers, right? And so he was so frustrated, and he's trying to push kids out the way so he could try and get. So finally, he just grabbed the back of my shirt so he can just, you know, be able to do, which is also symbolism as well, right? And so we make this short, maybe, you know, quarter of a mile walk to the land where the village is going to be, and the kids are just leading us the whole entire way. No words, no anything, but it was such a powerful moment in the whole trip of these kids leading to us. Later on, the villagers told us that that's a sign of good luck because kids know true intentions. Yes. And the fact that they were attracted to us, and the fact that they wanted to walk us to the land was a good sign to the villagers that we had pure intentions. Because if the kids were resistant or if they didn't want to be around us, you know, they knew something would be wrong. We had no clue about that. We just were enjoying the moments of the kids walking us through the village, which allowed us to be able to kind of get a tour of the village to the land. When we got to the land, Zena was kind of translating for the villagers, and they were saying the reason why they picked the 10 acres that they gave to us is because a lot of the kids are orphans. A lot of them, their parents had to leave the country. A lot of them were abandoned. And so they picked this piece of land on the edge of the village so the kids can look forward, not back. So they would be held back by their past. They could look forward to their future due to what we were going to build. Just so powerful. Just
listening at you, it's like you've taken us through a pictorial without being there, and your excitement that ignites me, you know, us here with Talking with Evie podcast, and you know, like you said, we've signed on to support you in this endeavor, and it is so amazing. I know we're gonna have you come back again because I saw the whole clip talking about the foods and how you as an American, you know, adapted that. You know, I know you have your father is you know, Caribbean background, and also, you know, myself. And so to transition from your American food and the things that we take so much for granted here in the States, and then you had to go and tell me a little bit about that. Well, you know, you I think you said for so many minutes the power something was cut off or something.
So one of the things I've learned just traveling just in the U.S. and the time that I got to spend in Europe is that if you take your American expectations and you set the bar based on your American expectations anywhere you go, you're either going to be disappointed or you're going to be constantly complaining, right? So one of my goals was to not have any expectations and to be able to walk in and just absorb everything, which was one of the best decisions I could have made because everything is different. It's a different culture. It's a different way of doing things. It's a different, you know, how it is that you live is different. And if I had walked in with expectations, then I would have been constantly complaining and comparing it to where I came from. Instead, I just tried to blend in. I tried to be as much of a chameleon as possible. Matter of fact, they were like, man, you're blended in way too well here. And I was like, just because my job is to be quiet and to be humble and to try and to honor what was going on as much as I can. This is an opportunity that God gave me that I was not expecting. So who am I to be able to mess that up? You know what I mean? And so in going there, just the culture of here in the U.S., I've considered myself an entrepreneur, but I chose to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I have the ability to be able to go to school, to go get a job, to do pretty much whatever it is you want to. And what I found in Liberia is a lot of the people are entrepreneurs because that's the only option is that they have. Right. So the people who it is that are selling, you know, in the booths on the streets, they have tons of markets. So the people who are selling in the markets, the people who it is that are bartering and trading stuff, it's because they have no other options but to do that, which makes them extremely smart and extremely sharp, right? And so that was most impressive is that you have a whole country, it seems like, full of entrepreneurs that don't necessarily have opportunities. So they make them. They make opportunities. Wow. And that was impressive, going down the streets, at how many people were coming up to the cars, selling stuff, how many people were, getting stuff imported from America and reselling that. And, like they have a big bakery. Yeah. And they would go into the bakery, they would buy the bread, and then they would come out on the streets. And for the people who don't want to stop, they would actually sell you the bread at the window. Same bread that you can walk inside to get it, but it's the convenience and the fact that they're just trying to make a little bit to make a living. The sad part is that you have a lot of kids, the child forced labor. So it's during the time where they should be in school. Yes. And even late at nighttime, they're out there on the streets 8, 9, 10 o'clock at nighttime trying to sell on the streets, which is a big, big challenge. As a matter of fact, one of the ladies at the International Women's Day said, where's our laws and our regulations saying that these kids can't be out there forced to be able to sell on the streets late at nighttime, which opens up predatory behavior and a lot of the other different stuff. And, there's not really any enforcement for kidnapping or anything else like that. So it ends up being a bad deal. And then the other thing that you have is a lot of these young girls, they feel like going to prostitution is the only way that they're able to make money. So you have 10, 11, 12-year-olds that are involved in prostitution just because they feel like it is that's the only way to make money.
So what is the statistics with the STDs in there, and how do they handle that?
I haven't even run those numbers. But here's the thing. You have a country where the average age is around 17. Wow. For the whole entire country. Because you had a lot of people who had to leave because of the war. A lot of people that got killed in the war 10 years ago, the Civil War. But then you also have a lot of people who were able to go to the U.S. and then send back for their family, but they either never come back or they're never able to get their kids over. So now you have an average age of the country that's very, very young. So you have a lot of young people with nothing to do. And this is where the drug epidemic is becoming a real big problem, because you have easy, accessible drugs for very cheap, and you have a lot of young people who are now getting addicted to these drugs. Wow. So some of these women that are going into prostitution, they get addicted to drugs, and they're doing prostitution to pay for their habit, and vice versa.
So with the country being so rural and so young, what kind of drugs? And is it the opioid?
Everything that you could think of. One of the gentlemen that I got a chance to be able to meet is actually part of the DEA. And he was just giving me a rundown of all the drugs that have been, the crack epidemic here in the U.S., the opioid epidemic here in the U.S. is now all hitting Liberia at the same time. Wow. So instead of it being in waves like it was in the U.S., you have availability of everything. He said pretty much every major drug, but for cheap, because they're being imported into the country for very, very inexpensive. So you have, a powder keg that's about to explode of bad things. That's really his mission, is to change all of that, to get rid of all the corruption and to be able to change that, to save the kids. He said the kids are who we need to save. And that's where we connected. Yeah. And so we're doing a lot of talk, because one of the buildings in our children's village is a rehab center. And when he saw that, he was super excited to be able to collaborate with us. So another divine connection, that we were eating at a restaurant, and Albertina happened to recognize us, two twin brothers, and she happened to recognize them. And then we went over to take a picture and started a conversation, and then that put us into communication, so that way we can work on this initiative together. Because that's also, the youth is my passion. So when he talked about this as being something that affects the youth, I said, we got to have some more conversations.
Okay, and then Albertina also is a counselor.
Yes,
too. Yes. So that will go hand in hand. Will they have in the school? They have the counselors, for the children, the drug. Correct. and the emotional part of them, the girls being in prostitution and all of this kind of
That's the whole thing. You can't just pull these people out of those situations. There has to be some rehabilitation. Yes. Or else they're going to just go right back to it after as they leave. It's just like, you can't just tell somebody to stop doing drugs.
That's what
you have to rehabilitate them and give them the tools.
That's right.
And then also give them purpose, so they'll stay away from the drugs. And that's the biggest problem. That's what he was talking about. He said, right now you throw people in jail when you catch them with drugs, but when they get out, guess what? They're going to go right back to. So there has to be the rehabilitation. That's what he was excited about what we were talking about in the children's village, is being able to not only just pull these kids out, but rehabilitate them.
Right. So you
in
will
the process.
have counselors and all of
That's
that.
the whole point.
Okay,
the safe houses are the first thing that we want to build. The school first, the safe houses next. But the whole purpose of these is to rehabilitate these children and instill family values back into them and make them productive citizens.
So will you have a medical team of sorts that will kind of adhere to every need? So you're going to have some medical needs. You got we talk a lot in America about the mental health, not just America, all over.
Correct.
Now everybody's concerned about mental health. So you're going to have a package where you...
This is our vision. This is our vision. And the thing is that it's all being led by God. Like God is opening up. We have the vision that he's given us. It's like a skeleton outline.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the kingdomrelationshipnetwork.org, you can actually see the 3D rendering of the village and all the different buildings. But this is not something that we have already backing for. This is just the vision that God has given us. And what we're finding is that he's putting the right people in place. Like we've had people who want to volunteer that specialize in mental health, that specialize in special needs.
Right.
And they're saying, we want to volunteer, but we have to build it. It's almost a build it and they will come type of situation.
Yeah. Anything, even the Bible tells you that, building on a firm foundation. You're doing the foundation, first the foundational part, and then you build up to something else.
Correct.
So you don't want any cracks in the building.
That's it.
That sounds good.
And because you're dealing with kids, our primary thing is safety for these kids. Okay. You can't just bring anybody in because people seem like they have the best intentions.
They don't.
You see all the documentaries on Netflix all the time. So being able to have a way to be able to evaluate the people who it is that are coming in before it is that we actually give them access to the kids is super important to us. And making sure that the kids' safety is priority is the number one thing. And like you said, Albertina has a background in both family counseling and marriage counseling and life coaching. So and then I have background in coaching as well. So using those, we're going to set up all the safety measures in place first before we give anybody access to these kids.
All right.
So that's kind of the overall plan for it. So just everything that we did was trying to make sure that we're setting up, like you said, the firm foundation for all that stuff. This trip was a couple of reasons. To set up the foundation, but also for me to be able to go and experience it so I can come tell the story.
Yes.
Right? It's one thing seeing it and talking to the people. It's another thing, a whole different thing, being there.
Well, people, because again, let me reiterate, because of your enthusiasm, your sincerity, your being able to be humble, like you said, to just sit down and just keep it shut no matter of all of your experience and your expertise, to just sit down at somebody else's feet and see how this thing should move.
Absolutely.
That right there. So when people, again, see your enthusiasm and hear your story, that will make them sign on. Because, I knew nothing in Africa, certainly wasn't on my radar. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, I'm good here in the USA. So when people are willing to get up off of their monies for a project, that's got to be God sent. And we're going to, I want to continue to hear updates on this, because now here with Evie, talking with Evie, I feel like we have a stake in this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do, in wrapping up, kind of give us a little capsule.
So one of the last things I want to leave with, because this is what I get the most, our perception here in the U.S. of what Africa is so skewed. Like even me growing up, National Geographic, the Save the Children campaigns they run late at nighttime with the kids with flies in their eyes and everything. That's all it is that we know. So all I would ever experience is the limited things that I saw on TV, and then the people who were begging for change. Naked. Yeah. So I had the weirdest questions. I was like, do they wear clothes in Africa? You know, does everybody live in huts? No. You know what I mean? And did you walk every place? Did you see a lion? And Monrovia, the capital of Africa, is just like New York or any place else. They had buildings and established, you know, businesses, and you know, it's very much like it is here in the U.S. And then just like it is that you go into the rural parts of the U.S., you got people who it is that are living in what you see, but it's such a small portion. Africa's a continent, you know, with over 70 countries in it, and then tribes inside of those countries. So every place you go is going to be different cultures and different ways of doing. Don't believe what it is that you see on TikTok. Now you got a whole bunch of this viral stuff on TikTok of all these tribes and everything else like that. It's almost become like a running joke about what it is. What I found whenever I went is that Africa is set up to be one of the most powerful continents in the world. You know, once it is that the people actually have the opportunity. And one of the things that was put on my heart is to be able to help the children in Africa level the playing field and have opportunities using technology, and to be able to do things. So it's just one of those things where it is that if you ever get the opportunity to be able to go visit Africa, just humble yourself and take everything it is that you know and put it aside, and then be able to create and form your opinion. And hopefully through my pictures, I have my page, A Texan in Liberia.
Tell us your page and where they could see these things.
It was kind of, I wanted a way to be able to share my experiences and my pictures as I was going. So I created a Facebook page called A Texan in Liberia. And in there, I was just kind of documenting my journey as I went. And now I'll be able posting stuff now that I'm back. So that's one way. KingdomRelationshipNetwork.org is the actual website where it is that you can go support. We're at the end of our paying for the second semester for the kids. So we've almost hit that goal. So you can go contribute there. You can do a monthly contribution, which will go towards us building the actual children's village. And you can see the children's village. And we also announce any things that we have going on, like we're getting ready for the next gala next year. And hopefully, God willing, we'll be making our next trip in November.
Tell us about your page, the pictures. So is that the same?
That's the Kingdom Relationship is where it is. But the Texan and Liberian is where you can actually go see pictures of our trip and kind of some of the summaries of what it is that we're doing. But I mean, there's so much in the trip. It's just almost hard to summarize in a small podcast episode.
Thank you so much, Alastair. And guys, you can see how excited he is. I'm excited. Thank you all so much for your comments about talking with Evie. Talk us up, because we will be having other content here with this podcast, not just speaking to women trying to get their life together and navigating their life, but we want to be open to hear what's going on in our world, not just the gloomy stuff and the sad things. There are people trying to make a difference in this world. We complain so much about bad things are happening, but these are good things that are happening. So from time to time, I will be interviewing people telling us of things just like this, helping not only children, but everybody. And hopefully I'll get a chance to interview Albertina and herself, and she will come on and talk to you. One of the podcasts, I will be interviewing Alastair's wife, Wendy, and she will be talking about her life before this wonderful man walked into her life. God bless you all. Thank you so very much for being there, and we love you.
Thank you for having me.